Okay, we're a minute early, but I'm going to go ahead and get this live stream started. Welcome to another ARCS chat. My name is Robin Bauer-Kogo. I am the association manager for ARCS. I have a couple of quick programming notes before I hand this over to John Robinette, who is running this chat this time. We are streaming this, so just be aware that between the time that everyone's talking and then by the time it beams out to YouTube, there's about a 20-second delay. So we do want to encourage you to participate in the chat. You'll want to sign into your Google or your YouTube account to do that. But just know there's a little bit of delay happening between when we see stuff and then when the actual stream goes out. Just a couple of quick programming notes when it comes to ARCS. Basically, we are working on our schedule for our winter programming, so please keep an eye on our website arcsinfo.org to see upcoming webinars and upcoming ARCS chats and all that kind of fun stuff. Immediately, though, we have a holiday party scheduled for later this week. It's going to be on the 9th. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you are a member of ARCS, you can sign up for it. So go to our website and you can go ahead and come join us for some holiday fun. Also, we just concluded our virtual conference. That happened last month. If you were a participant to the virtual conference, you can access all of the recordings. They are sitting there. They are waiting for you to start watching. So if you missed a session, we encourage you to go check out the conference website and you can view all those fun sessions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to John Robinette and we will see you all soon. Thanks. Go ahead, John.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We took November off, as you may have noticed, due to all of the live content from the ARCS virtual conference. But we're back with verve and swagger. Joining me today to co-host this is Amanda Robinson. And she is from Florida. And we have a huge panel to discuss our shipping situation for all of our art and artifact collections. Basically, this is a part 2 of the topic that we initially introduced last April of 2020, right as the pandemic went into full swing. And at that time, there was still a huge amount of uncertainty. I mean, in reality, there still is a lot of uncertainty, but we have learned to deal with it. So we're going to discuss all of the actions that we put into place and the new procedures that we put into place in order to deal with working and shipping during the pandemic. And we're going to talk about all of the new standards that we've created in order to make our jobs happen. Since we're all very connected, many of these procedures have become standardized throughout the world, and we want to look at each region in order to better understand how we've all adapted and what's going to stay the same and what's going to possibly change in the future, and if it's going to change by geography as well. We'll also try and anticipate what's coming up next. So to discuss all of these topics, I want to introduce our amazing panel today. Today, joining us is Jason Losh from Deedle, the Director of Business Development, Meg Colbert, the Managing Director of Box Art, Carlos Cordova, the President of Cordova Plaza in Mexico, Monica Bazan, the General Manager of Enli in Peru, Ana Tabuenca, Director of Fine Arts at SIT in Spain, Bob Simon, the Director of TCI here in the US, Tina Sullivan, the Vice President of the Western Region of Masterpiece, Ben Adams, the General Manager of Constantine in the UK, Shige Moriyama, the General Manager of Yamato Logistics, Derek Jones, Executive Director of Atelier in the United States, George Lacovara, Director of Gander and White, Los Angeles, Chuck Agro, Director of Special Projects at Crozier, and Antonio Adari, the Managing Director of Arteria in Italy. So let's begin today with a discussion with a topic that we ended with largely in our discussion in April, which was how do we protect our employees? And I can think of no better place to start than with the Art Services Workers Safety Coalition. Now, Meg and Derek were the founders of that organization. Can you tell us how you went about your process and also what's come out of the coalition of shippers that that you put together?
Yeah, I think Meg, maybe I'll jump in real quick and then you can take over. But more like a macro level, I think Sarah Smith said it really well yesterday, was that we were establishing trust within the industry and how to work. At that point, we were filling a void where there wasn't clear rules on how we could operate, what we could do at that point to, actually get back to work and do it in a safe way. I think, what it's evolved into is more communication and more openness and more trust between different vendors and museums. And I think that that's been a really amazing opportunity here that we've had. And I guess, Meg and Sarah really run the nuts and bolts of everything. So I'll let Meg mention all that.
Thanks, Derek. Yeah, I mean, I think just to kind of jump on what Derek said is we started off kind of operating in a vacuum where there wasn't really anything to look to for guidance. And obviously we still wanted to continue working in some capacity when the shutdown was over. But for us, it was really important to establish safety standards, not just as an industry, but specifically for our workers who would bear the brunt of sort of exposure in these situations. So I think from an organizational perspective, what we did was we formed meetings, Zoom meetings, where we tried to source consensus. And we did that through surveys and mailings, and then, group meetings where we tried to talk through some particular issues. And there was a lot of collaboration. A lot of people worked on the documents that became the documents that you can reference on the website. So I think it was a lot of people working together, which was also, I think, a really valuable experience from my perspective. And I think just to see as an industry competitors coming together, for example, to agree on safety standards and work together to define what those would be and come to agreements that would work both from a vendor perspective, but also in order to engage with institutional clients where there could be a kind of common ground that we could come to protect our workers. And I know that Derek would probably agree with this because we were talking about this yesterday, but I think that it helped provide a sense of trust, as he was saying, not just industry-wide, but even internally in our own businesses. I know from my perspective, our workers really appreciated knowing that they had these protections that were being taken seriously by everybody who was involved in projects that they were working on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what are sort of the enduring factors that might be coming out of this coalition and the standards you set?
I think honestly, a lot of the policies that everybody has as an attachment to their invoices or whatever it might be, right, seem to be coming circulated from what the industry was able to put together and then adapt them individually to each company. So I think it's a pretty standardized methods for safety, which was really the main goal at that point. Meg mentioned that the analytics on our website were way up over the last 2 weeks because of the Omicron. So it's something that I think is continually needing to be updated. And I think we had a little lull there where everybody's getting a little comfy. And then as soon as things start sweating it, it's going to become tip of tongue again, and something that we'll need to really start re-engaging.
Now, for those of you outside of the United States, did you come up with your own set of safety standards? Did you work with Art Services Workers Safety Coalition? How did you go about creating this trust and safety amongst yourselves? Let's start with Europe. Ben, do you want to talk about Europe and the UK? Ben and Anna and Antonio?
Yeah, to be honest with you, we followed a lot of the government guidance that was laid down, that for our government at least was relatively straightforward and pragmatic, which made a change. And we also had great interaction with the UK Registrars Group and Arts Council England. So we were able to, it's very much in the sense of, again, in a spirit of collaboration between the shippers and the museum clients as well, and indeed a lot of the regular private clients as well. The sharing of information and communication was quite key, and that was adopted very early on. And I think it was good. Everyone was singing from the same hymn sheet. So yeah, following the guidance that was laid down, it was relatively commonsensical, but it was good that we did that very early on.
Did you say work with other shippers, say, you know, whether it's through RTIM or ISAFAT, did you group together like that?
Yeah, there was definitely a sharing of information, both via RTIM, but also via the UKRG, because we have a corporate members side of that group. And you know, again, we were drawn together by the chair of the UKRG and the committee very early on to sort of lay down everyone putting in ideas and putting forward what they felt were key sort of parameters at that time, and it's led on from there. And I think a lot of the work that we did early on is still being adhered to today, which is which, you know, speaks volumes.
Yeah. Anna, Antonio, do you have anything else to add?
Well, we did a real mix between everything we found through the different participants in different forums, and also our domestic or national bodies. They immediately started to request, because most of the museums in Spain are depending from the state. So if they dictate certain rules, we need to follow them. So we made a global document and standard, and tried to simplify a little bit, because it was like too heavy to read all along, too long to detail, sometimes not so useful. So we tried to do like a, you know, quick how can I say, you know, quick lines to follow a resume. Mm-hmm. And then we implemented with very small meetings, but many meetings with all our teams in the different, I mean, drivers, packers, people in the office. And then this, I think, was the most effective to continue repeating, because it was changing along during the pandemic. So yep. Now the people, they are trained, they are used to follow the rules. I think is the best, the training schedule.
Monica and Carlos, Antonio, did you have something to add?
No,
sorry.
Just quickly, because already Anna and Ben said most of what we have done. We had, at the beginning, we had an exchange of information with the Workers' Safety Coalition, but then we had to follow our own given by the government. Also because there were been always different level of spreading of the virus. Sometimes was worse here, so stricter rules, etc. Up to the last one, I don't know what happened in other countries, but since the beginning of November, in Italy, we have something that is called Green Pass. That means that you can go to work in the office or in warehouse or any facility only if you have been vaccinated, or if you can give a test given in the last 48 hours. So if you don't want to do that, you cannot go to work and you are not paid. And that helped quite a lot. Some people that were not convinced to do the vaccine to do it, and but that was quite a very strict and difficult sometimes discussion within the companies with the workers.
Did you
especially with
lose
the
a lot
ban.
of? Yeah. Did you lose a lot of workers because of this?
Actually, only one, and the other two are doing the other two that are not vaccinated. So we have only 3 workers on about 100 people, and the other 2 are doing the test every other day. So
Yeah,
they keep working, but doing the test.
right. I want to talk to Monica and Carlos a little bit about the context in Latin America, because I think that it will be less familiar to most people listening. Did you adopt similar safety protocols? It seems that the waves of the virus kind of went from to Europe and then to the United States, but and then maybe to Latin America a little bit later. Can you tell us about how things happened in your countries?
Monica, ladies first.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlos. Yes, the virus arrived at South America a little late than in the other continents. So when we had the cases and the pandemic here, what the government did really was to take the safety protocols used in other continents and adapt them to our reality, no? So for us, it was not really difficult to follow the government requirements, but made them at the beginning stricter ones to guarantee 100% of safety for our workers, and also for the people we had to be in contact with, no? And it worked really good. First of all, we had to, although the offices are still making work of home office, all the operation department is working since April last 2020, no? And with very strict protocols, as Anna mentioned, no? A lot of chats, direct chats with all the staff, making consciousness about that this was really a problem, a health problem, that Peru was during all the process having a lot of difficulties trying to control the pandemic, and that we, as part of our community, we had to be the ones that guide not only in work, but also as part of our families, to keep us a lot in care, no? And this worked really, really very well. Here, everyone is really trained, and when the vaccination process started, everyone wanted to get vaccinated, thankfully. And all of our staff is completely, fully vaccinated. And this has been very important for us, because we really didn't have complicated cases. We always felt that we were protecting not only our staff, but also museum staff and all of our all the places where we had to work in, no? And for us, it has been very easy now, because the new regulation is that since December 15th, all the people above 45 must have full vaccination to enter to public places, to travel by bus or by plane nationally. So actually, we are very, I don't know if it can be the word, but grateful that we have contributed really to keep things doing well in the cultural sector in Peru, no?
Carlos?
Well, yes, in our country, because we are very close to the US, so we have almost the same rules. And also the museums, most of them, like in Spain, belong to the government, so the rules are the same. So what we did is we follow both, rules from here and there, and we invent our own rules for the company. For example, now we are having a lot of home office from the people from the offices. And if you don't use drivers this day, we keep it at home. So we call the crew or the staff only when we need it. So in this case, we have only a very small crew always. And fortunately, all the staff apply the vaccines both. And because by law we cannot stop somebody if you don't want it. We need to have all the people, even if they don't want to vaccine. So we have we all have vaccines, and it's we are having a nice. We didn't have too much people with COVID last year, maybe only 3. So and we are 100, so it's okay. And we survive. We spend a lot of time doing this, including myself, and we are going to make it. We are going to make it for the future. We have a new one, so we don't know when it's finished. This, but we still using the masks on the offices. The washing hands every very often. That's very simple rules. So we keep it simple, like SIT. And it's working. So I'm very happy that we're still there. We haven't had any passes away or nothing. So we are there. Yes.
Thank you so much. I want to encourage everyone who's listening right now to jump in the chat and send us your questions. Amanda, is there anything happening in the chat that we should know about?
Nothing yet. Just a lot of greetings and happy holiday wishes.
I guess I better ask harder questions then. So let's talk about what's happening here. I take it that most people have started working from home and creating remote work. I'm going to start with Tina and Jason. And can you tell me about how you've adapted to that and what it actually means, and if you think you're going to continue to work remotely? And then I'm going to talk with Chuck about actually working on site during all of this stuff. So let's get both perspectives. So yeah, Tina and Jason, let's talk about remote work.
Well, I guess I can start. Yeah, we've been remote since March of 2020. Masterpieces decided as of January, we're going to have our staff go back about 3 days a week. We're going to kind of see how that goes. But I think that the hybrid work has actually benefited us in some ways. I mean, I think it's nice to be back in the office because there's a little bit more collaboration face to face. But there's a lot of nice things. I know that people always talk about that work-life balance, and it's in some ways working from home has hindered that, because I feel like every time I walk by my office, which is in my house, I'm like, I better just check a couple more emails. But it does allow me to cook dinner at night. Kind of at 3 o'clock, I'll prep for dinner. But no, I think that ultimately we probably will be back in the office. Every state's a little bit different in terms of, in LA, we still have to wear masks in the office regardless of vaccination status, which some people, are hesitant to sit all day in a mask. So that's kind of something we're hoping will be done with soon. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what we're doing. We're just getting ready to start going back.
I think we're in a similar situation. Go ahead, Tina.
No.
I think we're in a similar situation where our offices are almost all remote. In our satellite offices, a lot of the people are going into the office because they're in small groups, so they can work inside of there. Our jobs are so complex that sitting next to somebody to be able to ask a question is so relevant and important that when you're working remotely all the time, it's hard to be able to just riff next to the person that it's sitting right there and get those answers that you need. So I think it's really important that we are able to sit in those offices and have those conversations and sort of learn and grow together. That being said, we don't have any plans right now for immediate bringing everybody back into the offices, but talking about like these safety protocols and everything too, I think when we're seeing these actually put into place, I'm down in Miami Basel right now. We're still here. It's our last day of loadouts, but we have over 80 techs on site right now just for DEDL at the fair. So looking at those safety protocols and how they're actually implementing them in the real world with everybody in there in this building, I think you start to see what actually works and what doesn't work, and to take those and sort of bring those into small job sites, but in the large ones. So like for Miami Basel, what they're doing is they made you go provide your COVID check or get a test immediately. You get a wristband that allows you to then go into the fair. Masks are worn on site every day, and then there's rapid COVID testing every single day if you want it or you determine that you need it. So I think building those safety protocols with the institutions that are actually providing these services like Basel are really important moving forward.
Thanks. Thank you for that. I think that there's a lot of, since you mentioned the safety protocols, there was someone just asked in the chat if we are going to have to implement new or tweak our safety protocols because of the Omicron variant. Is that something that you think you're going to have to do, or is it we have our protocols and we're just going to stick to them? Is it more of the latter?
I would say so.
Yeah,
I think the latter too.
Yeah. So Chuck, I know with Courier, you've been doing on-site projects. Your job is to do all the weird, crazy jobs that require a lot of scale, and you've been doing that throughout the pandemic. How have you navigated these waters with all of the on-site projects?
I'm still alive, so that's positive. We have to follow CDC guidelines, and we follow a number of the government protocols because a lot of my projects are in either government or museum institutions. So identifying our staff in a database as for who has been and who has not been vaccinated is important, since many of our clients require that our employees be vaccinated. At the beginning, we were doing the same thing as everybody else, buying crazy amounts of PPE, masks. I've got my mask right here. I have to wear it on site. I tend to be, right now, I'm away from the masses, so it's a little bit easier. But my projects never shut down, which is what you're alluding to, because they were essential service projects. And there's restrictions here. I'm in DC at a Smithsonian building. Most of the PPE was already in place. Some of it was added. There's some distancing. There were issues with some staff that did not want to. And the problem really isn't being on site. We know the clients are safe. We know we're safe. But your staff, they may need to travel on the subway. They have to figure out a way to commute. And that became more problematic than anything else. Probably the most difficult project that I ran was in Oklahoma, where we were relocating an entire museum. And I had to go through, as probably everybody knows here, that right now, if you're sending a courier anywhere, you have to add in quarantine time. And I was trying to consider what would happen in an enclosed environment if you send somebody to a project and they tested positive, and then I had to quarantine the entire staff or the entire museum. And in some parts, since I know from our company running a shuttle that every state, I think we all know this, has different regulations. One of the regulations in Oklahoma was that school children didn't need to wear masks to school once they went back to school. So a number of people that had children on the site were having children that had COVID, even though they weren't infected. And then we had to test everybody, and they had to leave the site. So we created pods. I hired most of the staff locally. We discussed this before. I hired them locally, and I hired replacements for them locally, so that we had a contingency if people weren't able to come on site. So the project didn't have to slow down. And it was a little white knuckle, but the project did come in on time and on budget, and we did have to swap out bodies periodically for different reasons, all due to COVID, different COVID restrictions. Here and the government projects, they're so shut down and away from the public. there hasn't really been an issue. On the museums, even though you're probably in a section of the museum doing a relocation or an installation, generally there's still going to be some people in the public there, and there are more office workers there that may not have to follow the same regulations, and more surfaces to touch. Here, we're always wearing masks, we're always wearing gloves. We're not being tested regularly, we're not doing spot checks on COVID, but everyone is following CDC guidelines. And, we do, there was a period where temperatures were being taken every day. We did that in Oklahoma. I have to do that for my son going to school in New York State. I have to take his temperature and report it every day and then sign an affidavit. And, it's almost the same thing with the theaters in New York. I have to go to a theater, same thing. They check your temperature, you have to show your cards. So it's kind of been the same thing. It's a little complicated. Each institution handles it a little differently, but I've gone into the Met, they check my temperature, I get a wristband, I have to show my card, and I have to wear my mask the entire time I'm in there. We do the same thing here. And so far, no real issues. I don't see it changing unless CDC changes the regulations. It's not going to change with Omicron. It's really the validation, not the validation, but the database lists of which of our employees has been vaccinated. And that really is becoming a client requirement. They're requiring, we had it in place already, but once it became a government initiative, it became a museum initiative. And once it became a museum initiative, it became our initiative. So we supplied that.
Yep. Antonio, you had a comment?
Yeah, it's more kind of thinking that, especially in this right period for the Northern Hemisphere, where there is a lot of traditional flu, not COVID, it's really important, that we, all of us, we take the responsibility to take decisions, sometimes not easy, if you have to change a team, if you have to postpone an appointment or something you have to do, or a transport. But at least as soon as we have someone that can be in a dangerous situation to spread the virus, we decide immediately to keep it at home and change it. This is a cost for a company, but I think this is something we have to do it, because there are no many specific ways to detect if there is a COVID. Even the temperature is not really enough, because sometimes there are people that are spreading without even having temperature. So any little sign, and this period in winter here is quite difficult, because we have a lot of people with flu. Likely at the moment is only flu for everybody, but we always send them to make immediate test and the real test, and be sure that they are not affected by the virus. So it's something I think that as manager of a company, we have to do it to protect all of us and the museums where we work and all the stuff.
Okay. It looks like we have a few questions. Amanda, do you want to tell us what our questions are coming in?
I'm happy to. We had one come through the chat that had asked that they had heard there are shortages of drivers for fine art trucks. Is that true worldwide? Is there a sense that that might become a long-term concern?
I'm going to ask Bob specifically, and I know George, I spoke specifically with about this question. This is where I was going next. Do you guys want to comment on that?
I'm happy to start. Yeah, we are facing an issue with hiring drivers now, and other art handlers and qualified technicians. I even think that issue is extending to the project managers and office positions as well. A lot of much of that could be related to the pandemic and protections that were put in place for furloughed workers and laid off workers. But also, it's also the product of a very hot labor market. I mean, our industry has really taken off since the pandemic has, settled down, or we've learned how to deal with it better. And I think that this is basically the economics 101. The things are really heated now, and it's hard to get labor. It's definitely an employees marketplace now, not an employers. And do I think it's going to be long term? I think it will wax and wane with the fate of the pandemic, ongoing dealings with that and also with the economy?
I think that it will remain long-term. I think one of the issues is that as drivers and art handlers find that they can do different things and make a living, they choose not to be on a truck for 2 weeks at a time. There are a lot of vendors in the US that have trucks sitting because they don't have drivers. And it creates a situation where clients have to work further in advance and prices are going to get squeezed higher because eventually you're going to have to pay the drivers more. And I don't think, as I said before, I don't think that it's going to get better. I think that there are fewer, at least on the driver's side, there are fewer people that want to be in that lifestyle of driving a truck. I mean, if you think about it, going cross country in the US, it could be a 2-week run. And that means people are away from their house or their family or their kids for 2 weeks. And a lot of people are finding that they have other options. And I don't think they're going back. We had one company whose drivers basically won't go up to Wyoming and North Dakota. It's not a question of money. It's a question of they just don't want to go. And I don't think that's getting better. And I think that we all have to learn how to deal with it. We all have to plan ahead further than we're used to planning.
I found on the remote projects, because I mean, I'm familiar with the major markets. We're all in major markets, and a lot of art handlers, project managers, and drivers have left those markets because of COVID, if nothing else. And I've been doing projects in the middle of the country, and a lot of them moved there. So I was pleasantly surprised. In Oklahoma, I had people who worked in museums or for major service companies from from LACMA, from the Jewish Museum, people from Chicago, and they were all in Oklahoma. Part of it was those smaller towns also offered those people money to move there in the middle of COVID. So a lot of them took that, and I was able to actually put together, really good crews outside of New York. Now, inside New York's a whole other story.
Yeah. Shige, is this a problem in Japan as well, or in other parts of Asia?
I think it really did. It's different between Japan and other Asian countries because I can only say about Japan, and Japan is now really an aging society. So before the pandemic, shortages of handlers or drivers are already a big issue for us. So it still continues. But I don't think it got worse after the pandemic, the workers. I think it's all same worldwide, but transport workers is treated as essential workers, like the hospital guys. So we don't, even there is a lockdown, we could work, and at the moment, I think in the pandemic, there are many other industry who is in a risk, like traveling or airline, restaurants. So there are many people who got lost work. So we rather worry after the pandemic for the shortages and shortages of handlers and drivers, actually. So,
Meg, you have a
that's the
comment?
situation.
Sorry, Shige, yeah, Meg?
Yeah, I was just going to add into the conversation just to say that I think we've seen a lot of difficulty filling positions, both in transport and for handlers and carpenters. And I think a lot of it has to do with, people having other options, but just also very different expectations about what their jobs are going to look like, at least in New York City. And I think that it's part of a larger issue of what employees want from their work life, and how companies can sort of evolve to change to meet those needs, which is not something that happens overnight. And I think is challenging from a structural perspective to try to meet those needs, fill positions, and keep things running like the way that the industry expects things to run. And maybe part of the answer is that, some of the expectations of the turnarounds and the pace that we are used to working at, maybe that needs to be evaluated a little bit in terms of the workers who are increasingly hard to find, especially in, major city markets.
Tina, do you want to comment or sorry, Anna first and then Tina, or sorry, go ahead, Tina.
I was just actually going to make some of those same points, because I think, a lot of us have lost, a talented work pool because, people started working from home and then they realized, well, I don't need to pay these, high rents, or maybe I'm going to sell my house in the city. I'm going to move out to somewhere where it's, it's a little, I can afford something nicer and it's better for my kids. And I think finding ways maybe now that we all are used to working remotely to maybe attract those people again. Like Chuck said, there's like people in the middle of the country that he's finding great talented work. So maybe we have to think outside of the box in terms of maybe everybody doesn't have to be in the office. Maybe we can, pay someone in Kansas to help in LA or in New York. And I know that's not going to fit all purposes, but I think there's maybe a change in perspective as to what our office life looks like.
Anna.
Yes, well, my point is it's very, in my experience, it's very clear that economically, these drivers are in a very high risk, and they cannot because the cost for fuel has changed dramatically, and most of them, not maybe the ones that are working for us for fine arts, which are more cared by the companies. But most of the drivers along Europe, they work for themselves. They are independent, and they are contracted by work, by travel. So it makes really difficult for them to make a trip like they used to do, because the fuel has changed in every country, so they cannot ride with the similar rates. And on the other side, clients, as happened to us every day, they want a fixed budget, fixed price. And it's really no way to keep the figures as they used to be. We need more flexibility, because at the end, when you contract with, and this is another issue, but the air freights and on all this is changing day by day. So no longer 15 days, 6 months or 3 months estimate. Forget about it. No more. I think this is the main consequence of the pandemic in terms of the economy. Yep. We are in the air.
Yeah, Jason, and then we'll ask Meg.
I just wanted to know, just building on Bob and Anna's too, I think it's important to note this isn't specific to just our industry. This is across the board in all areas of a strained supply chain. We're dealing with this, like truckers were already difficult to find before the pandemic. And now we're in a situation where underpaid and overworked employees don't want to do those things anymore. So if you're looking at things like shipping for ocean and trying to get containers out of those ports, it's just not going to happen the way that it used to. So it's going to take a fundamental rethinking of how we do business in some of these areas and what's possible and what isn't possible. It's incredibly complicated. Even the timelines for dropping off freight at the airport, to what Anna was saying too, like the cost of trucking to the airport now is exponentially higher than what it was previously, because we don't know how long our drivers are going to be sitting there waiting to drop off freight. It's intense all the way around.
Yeah. Meg?
Yeah, I was just going to add in, I think too, like there's a real tension between those workers, not tension between the workers themselves, but tension between the expectations of workers who have to work on site and those that can work remotely. I feel like for a lot of workers that can work remotely, there's been a lot of really positive changes in our business. We at BoxArt, we found that we developed new ways to communicate with each other and chart projects, to track costs and things like that were really useful and beneficial and were a true evolution. And unfortunately, though, for people who work, whose jobs are dependent on them being on site, they don't get to see those kind of new flexibilities and benefits, and are, I think, often end up feeling kind of left out of a larger conversation about burnout and work-life balance. That for people who started working remotely, there's a really good vocabulary that's been put out into the world that everybody's talking about. And it's just a kind of interesting thing to think about as a business. How do you answer those needs of these two very different groups of employees?
Are you finding, and this is a question for everybody, are you finding that you have to pay higher wages in order to attract people? And does that increase the cost for the client as well?
I think that people do expect more now. I think that when you see people seeking positions that, in 2018 might have offered less, now there's just a general consensus among those job seekers that they want more and that their labor is worth something. And I think that's valuable in itself, that the value of that labor has gone up because it is valuable. These are skilled people who provide great services.
Yeah. Derek, and then after Derek, we'll have Antonio.
I think everybody was shaking their heads yes that the cost of labor has gone up.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That answered it. I was going to say that we just did a flat rate increase for everybody across the board, and then obviously the numbers have been jumping up when you see the ads that people are hiring for. But I think it's also the cost of everything is more expensive, right? So outside of this, milk's more expensive all of a sudden. So I think to Meg's point of having staff that are on the road, one of the reasons we wanted to get all our staff back in the office was not out because they couldn't work remotely. It was out of solidarity for everybody that's on the road, right? So it was kind of trying to get we're a 3-day-a-week schedule basically in the office. But I think that it is one of those things where as a community, we're asking a lot of the people that are on the road, and often they're the lowest paid. So, that needs to kind of be equaled and get to a better spot for the industry as a whole.
Antonio?
In Italy, we have a bit of different situation. We do not feel problems with the shortage of manpower in terms of art handling or transport, for fine art transport. It's true for other transport, for freight, general freight, yes. We know that there is, but not in fine art. And what I feel more is that we do have higher cost for freight and other stuff, but not for the labor. But what I feel now that is important to understand that most of our normal clients, they have much reduced budgets, museums, private organizers. And so the only way we can all work together to help this situation is to increase project planning. This is very, very important. This is not happening at the moment. We still have last-minute projects that is not helping, to optimize costs. And this is also in terms of sustainability. Everything can be done better and also optimizing resources, but we have all to work in the same direction. I mean, as an agent, we cannot do it on our own. I mean, if we have to do something and we are requested to do a transport or a project tomorrow, we try to do it tomorrow, then then we have to use what is needed to do it tomorrow. But if we can plan 1 week or 1 month, depends on how big is the project in advance, for sure, we can find a better solution. There are ways, to keep costs under control, but it is not something you do at the last minute. This is for sure. And what I feel now, that to help all this situation, we should really be able, organizer, exhibition organizers, museum and agents, to work well in advance. And yeah, that is the only very important situation that I don't see at the moment here in Italy.
Chuck, and then George.
I just wanted to add that I'm sure that we're not alone in this, but I know a lot of companies now in this current labor market are offering recruitment bonuses and signing bonuses. So we're not alone in that too. So that, of course, also adds to our additional costs.
Are you?
I was going to add that
yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Chuck, go ahead.
That's right. I was going to add that. I mean, one of the things we're missing by having fewer people, because we do have to distance on site. Our main concern has always been the employees. I mean, from the very beginning, what we did was we have a risk assessment form, and if they feel that something's at risk, they have the option of identifying that risk and staying away from that site. And so there is a certain distancing. But our industry, the art handlers, the packers, they depend on tribal knowledge. It's more of an apprenticeship than an actual training. And we'd have to spend more time on actual training, internships, as opposed to apprenticeships the way it used to be, to get art handlers up to the same speed that we used to. In the old days when I started, it's just, they just stuck you with like a team of senior art handlers and you learned underneath them. And that's become less prevalent because of distancing and the lack of numbers, and also people leaving the industry. So yes, that tribal knowledge seems to be disappearing, and that training has become an additional cost.
Amanda, is there other questions? We're going to come to couriers at some point here. I want to, and as well as sustainability, but I want to see if there's anything going on in the chat other than to respond to what we've just been discussing.
Well, there's been actually a few like procedural questions that people are asking in the chat. If you want to go ahead and address some of those.
Okay. Is it stuff that we've already covered?
No.
Okay.
No. So some of these questions are like, what are the latest protocols for segregating and cleaning crates and materials and tools? And questions about whether or not workers are still working in pod structures. And I'm assuming what they mean by that is like drivers that are typically always driving together and not necessarily switching out employees as they had previously.
Is that still the case for most people? Yeah. Has any protocol changed with regards to cleaning? I don't think people are really cleaning crates anymore. Is that correct? Yeah.
Not in Mexico, no.
No.
Not anymore. No.
Yeah. I want to move the conversation over to sustainability, just because that has it touches so many other topics, such as couriers, for example. But I'm going to start with Ben, because Constantine opened a new environmentally friendly, if we can call it that, facility in the middle of the pandemic. And this must have been something you were planning for a while in advance, but can you tell us a little bit about how you did it and why you did it, and if how you can do it financially? Let me put it that way, because finances and the economy of being sustainable seems to be the major obstacle for most people when it comes to reducing their carbon footprint.
Yeah, it was a really good time to open a 18,000 square meter warehouse. Fundamentally, we've been looking around Europe for a long time at the developments that a lot of our partner agents had made, especially with regards to ground source heat pumps and such like. And it was so difficult to actually implement that in the UK for a variety of different reasons. We didn't necessarily have the technology had to be brought in from abroad. And also finding the right site in order to do it. And it took a long time to actually put that in place, and also the financing of that. but we felt that since, I would say, the last 12, 15 years, there's been a drive from the UK museums, especially towards sustainability. But it's always a bit, what is sustainability? And it was never really kind of defined. It was just, it was just something that was, we want to work towards this, but we don't really know what it means some of the time. So I think we were asked to try and, or we were kind of expected to try and find a way as a service industry as to how we could directly affect people's emissions, direct emissions footprint. And that's tricky because the majority of the time, most of our emissions are going to be from procured air freight or sea freight. Now, I don't want to get existential about it, but where does that footprint sit? Does it sit with the airline? Does it sit with the company that's procuring the air freight on behalf of the museum? Which museum does? Where does it's very complicated. So as a result, where can we directly affect? So buildings, crates. You could say vehicles, but realistically, the tech probably isn't there for vehicles, not for an art vehicle as we see as an art vehicle. So the building was the start. So stealing ideas from our partner agents across Europe, they didn't mind, to be honest with you. And opening that building was a key driver. And yeah, I mean, we're looking at 75% reduction in emissions, which is pretty good start anyway.
So Jason, I know that you've worked a lot on the carbon offset program for Deedle. And carbon offsets are a very sort of controversial topic because some people say that you're just buying carbon neutrality as opposed to doing the hard work to get it. But I think they still have a role to play. Can you tell us about your program and how it works?
I think we started with carbon offsets because we knew that's a thing that we could do. We've moved on from carbon. We still do carbon offsets, but the carbon offsets that we do with Red Plus programs, and we use a nonprofit out of London where we pay the broker's fee and then we don't do any markup on the offsets that we actually sell. So, and I think one of the reasons offsets are controversial is because there are a lot of shady projects for offsets. So you have to make sure that you're using third-party verified offsetting. But more importantly, I think sustainability isn't just about finding like that one thing that you can do to try to offset what you're doing in your business practices. And recently, I've been in the pilot program of Key Culture, which is an amazing institution helping our industry, and also working with Art Switch as well too. And part of that process is educating myself and Deedle about what sustainability really is, because I think we need resources in our industry to help us figure out where we are in this process. And I think one of those things is realizing that it's not just about environmental sustainability, it's social sustainability as well too, and identifying and managing our business's impact both positively and negatively on people themselves, and what demographics that affects. And if we're in an industry where a lot of our institutions are proponents of helping communities, then we have to understand what our negative impacts on those communities are too with our sustainability approaches. So I think it's a big picture thing. And when we draw it down into just carbon offsetting or just finding out what the impact of being net neutral on our buildings are, it's a small part of a broader picture.
Understood. I think just FYI, we're coming up to the hour mark. So if everyone can stay on board, we can continue the conversation. Understood if you need to run, but I think we're finally hitting our stride here. So likewise for you listeners, please stick around if you can. So I think your point here is well taken, that there's a broader responsibility beyond just the offsets. And that leads right into the conversation about couriers, right? So this is what this seems to have become the primary topic for the industry over the last almost 2 years now. So, but to be honest, it predates the pandemic in a massive way. I've done personally a lot of research on behalf of ARCS as well, continuing others' research before me when I was on the board. So this is not a new thing, but I think what's new is that the pandemic really kind of forced a lot of institutions to actually deal with the high cost of courier travel. So I'm going to just throw this out there to everyone, but because I don't know where to start, because everyone's got an opinion about this. But many institutions are taking a no courier travel, ostensibly because of the environmental impact of it, of which it's massive, right? With courier travel, but of course the cost plays into it. I remember seeing over the ARCS conference last month, someone talked about 6-figure savings for a single exhibition by not requiring couriers. So does anyone have a specific point that they would like to make about sending the couriers? I know this is a little bit broad, but it's just been such a massive topic. Can anyone jump in? Bob, go ahead.
So one of the issues that we've seen is museums not agreeing with each other on whether they want to send a courier or not. And it becomes a huge issue if the museum that's borrowing something is unwilling to send a courier for the lender, then us as vendors, we can sort of get caught in the middle. And I think that in the big picture, some of the bigger museums still want couriers. They're happier with them. I believe the insurance companies will say that they're happier with them. And some of the smaller museums who have adapted to the electronic couriers, so to speak, are very willing to do it. And so I think that now we're sort of stuck in the middle, and that the museums have to figure out really what they want. And part of it is a cost issue, part of it is a sustainability issue, part of it is timing. Like Antonio was talking before, we have to work further in advance. And an issue now is if you have travel restrictions and you have a courier that needs to go, well, all of a sudden maybe the courier isn't going, but you still have to pay the ticket. So it's a huge issue. And I think that on the museum side, somehow the communication has to be better so that the museums can be on the same page, not fighting against each other.
Right. Antonio, and then we'll go Monica and then Tina.
Yeah, I don't think this is something we can really, probably I can give a personal idea, but this is, as agent, as Bob said, we are in the middle, and this is a discussion that should go between museums and exhibition organizers. I think on our side, we try to be ready for both, as a traditional courier, also with the new electronic, with the new virtual courier, etc. We have done that. What I can say that in terms of office work, when there are no couriers, for us is much less. Especially in Italy, we do a lot of what normally the registers are doing in the US museums. So we have doing all the organization of the travel, booking for the hotel, etc. So without that, we have much easier work in the office. In the venue, while installing, probably is not easier because all the set of video conferences, etc., can be problematic. And sometimes we need to have also to help the organizers or the museum in Italy to have staff to do that, and this is keeping more working hours from our side. Also, when we have to do it at the airport, if there is no courier, we have to document, send pictures, etc. It's it's something, but for sure the cost in terms of budget it's less. This is what we can say, but then it's decision that the museum will have to take, I think.
Monica?
Thank you, Jan. Yes, in our case, we have a different situation because our national museums are regulated by the Ministry of Culture. and they continuously require the presence of their couriers when a Peruvian exhibition is traveling to another country. And this has given us several additional costs for the organizers of the exhibitions to trying to match the traveling restrictions in each country with the travel of the trip of the courier and perhaps installation schedule at the museum. No, so we have some months ago one case that an exhibition traveling to UK, to London, and then the South Americans had to make 14 days of quarantine. So the Ministry of Culture did not accept to have a virtual courier, and instead of this, it was necessary to have 2 official couriers, one traveling before to make the quarantine in London, and the other one working in Lima with us, with the packing and all that, and checking all the transport process. No, so unfortunately we cannot talk about sustainability in terms of couriers. No, it is all the opposite, really.
Dina and then Meg.
Yeah, I mean, I think apropos to what Monica said, I think the appetite for people wanting to travel is a little bit lesser because of all of the things they have to do and all the hoops they have to go through. So we've been trying to find ways, you know, through the pandemic, like with the trackers, to try to make things easier. And we also have like an online portal that we're using now that's kind of a real-time update with our ArtWise portal. But I think that, you know, as you said, John, there's so many museums now that really just don't want to send couriers. And I'm curious if that's going to change. But one thing I wanted to get back to and ask some of the truckers, we've had a lot of interest from clients talking about electric vehicles. And is that something that you guys are planning to invest in? I was kind of curious about that.
Electric.
Well, my Crozier's parent company is investigating that right now because we have so many vehicles on the road. So it is something we're investigating.
Everything touches a truck, right? So
I do think everybody's looking toward. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I think everybody's looking towards that, but until Amazon creates the fleet that is running around the country, we can't all get those trucks, right? So they're just not. There's not a real thing for us, right? No truck is. There's not enough battery or lithium ion to run something at this point that big. So I don't think it's realistic quite yet.
As an example, the port of Long Beach isn't looking to switch out their trucks to zero emission vehicles until 2035. That's their timeline.
That's not that far away, honestly.
No, but it means they start saving now. So, and they're adding, I think it's a $20 surcharge per container to start building toward that to 2035.
Wow. Meg?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to speak on the courier issue, just that, like, I know that for us, we've seen definitely delays in shipments and in our timelines, production timelines, based on the fact that museums and other clients haven't agreed on their courier policies, which often means that we're kind of set waiting for that decision to be made, which can compress our timelines. And that's been something that we've had to adjust to, which is new. And, you know, it would be nice if there was a little bit more consensus on the issue.
I understand that there's a lot happening in the chat right now. Amanda, can you update us with some of the comments and some of the questions?
Surely. So the courier topic definitely brought in some discussion. And let's see. So some of the comments made were that traditional in-person courier shipments are in a surprising way more prevalent now among the people who are listening, and that there are still institutions like the National Galleries of Scotland that are working with bookend or virtual couriers currently, but hoping to return in some fashion to city traditional couriers in the spring for touring exhibitions. So it sounds like while there may have been some concessions, surely that there is some consensus that returning to a traditional courier ship is preferred maybe among your museum clients.
That's so interesting because because we were complaining that couriers were expensive before, and now in the pandemic world, they're even more expensive, but everyone wants to go back. That's a super interesting point. Any other questions for the panel?
Someone did ask a particular question about whether or not couriers are being allowed in cargo sheds in the European Union. And I don't know if any of our panelists could speak to that.
Thing is, we're not in the European Union anymore. I can't comment. But in the UK, unfortunately, in the UK, it's really been a case by case basis, and depending on how the pandemic's shifted, and airline to airline. At the height of the pandemic, no, you couldn't go near an airline warehouse. They weren't letting anyone in. Now it's more the case of yes, you can get in most airlines, you can get courier passes, and you can certainly get the airline representatives in. Whether something changes again with the new variant, we're not too sure. But again, it really is airline to airline.
Yeah,
we never had problems in Italy to allow couriers to go in the cargo area. Sometimes only if we had more than one courier at the same time. That was, they asked us just to reduce to one. When you have exhibitions, sometimes you can have two or three together, and this is not easy at the moment. But one per shipment is normally allowed, both in Malpensa and Rome airports.
Carlos, in Mexico, I've sat outside of cargo sheds trying to get in with shipments with Cordova Plaza. Is that the same there? Is there still restricted access?
Yeah, this is another issue because since September 11, we cannot go into the tarmac, for example, but we can stay. Yeah, you can take couriers to the cargo area for each airlines. That's no problem at all. We need, of course, a special permit and everything. So we are right now at the same with the same rules as 2 years ago. There's no problem at all. Only the tarmac.
I had a question about Europe too, because we've been told recently, I think it's mostly out of Lux, that in order to supervise, they're charging sole use containers. Is anyone experiencing that too? Because we've heard that.
Yeah, no, it was something they were planning to do, and then we called Cargolux in recently, and they've reneged on that now. It was a misunderstanding, apparently. You can, well, whichever way you want to say. Yeah, it was a misunderstanding. Yeah, right.
I think sometimes it's more a problem or when you deliver the shipment to the airport, because if there is a courier, normally you try to do it at the last minute, and then normally the airline can say, sorry, if you come the last minute, it's okay, but then we cannot build a full container with other goods, so you have to use only one. If you agree to deliver a bit earlier so that they can put together other goods, then it's easier. It's not the presence of the courier itself, but more when the time that you give to the airlines to prepare the pallets.
There is a famous saying, I don't know who said it, but never let an opportunity go to waste. And I think that we've seen some museums take this moment as an opportunity to reduce the cost and reduce the carbon footprint without sending couriers. But I want to know what other opportunities have arisen, whether it's for shipping or for the industry as a whole. Anna, do you have a comment before we address that question?
Yes, it's about security procedures at the airport, which I think it has really changed our way to work, because it is more and more introduced this need to X-ray the crates and to become a known shipper, known museum, before the authorities, in order to get all these certificate to allow to deliver the crates with not so long time at the airport. I mean, all these little steps, but the long list of demands. This is what for my point of view, and the existence or not of the courier, they're standing up and looking at everything. That of course it's a more work for us to prepare, but again, I think security is more an issue.
So I do want to get to this idea of the opportunity at the moment. I want to ask Shige, because specifically because in the middle of all of this, you threw in the Olympics, and so you were involved in not only your normal work, but also the extreme sort of work of shipping things for the Olympics. So is there something that you're going to benefit from as a result of all of this experience during the pandemic?
Yeah, we had Olympics. It finished September, but it's like history now. Yeah, it's all way. But actually, logistics of Olympics still continues, and when we have to send back all the shipments and it ends maybe until next March 22. And as I said, we had many visitors, even there is no audiences. I think about 100,000 totally athletes coming from abroad. And yes, actually, I think it was on the news, but many had infected and got active person, but unfortunately not a big mess. So but
have you had to change any operational procedures in a way to do all of this work that will benefit you in the future, and that you think you will continue to use in the future?
Oh yes, yeah. Actually, we were one of the nominated agent for the Olympic logistics. So we many of my colleagues have to help for this big event, and
and I could also say, with respect to say Tina and Jason, you guys have used trackers, and everyone else has started using trackers as well. This, I think, is another positive outgrowth, because it doesn't mean you can travel without a courier or without any sort of supervision, but it's a lot more information that we didn't have before that's going to help us maintain our crates. And I think that's a really positive outcome of this. Anna, do you have a comment?
Well, we adapted to the needs, the different technological needs we started to use, and now it's actually a very wide range of different technologies, and because everyone wants a system, or the other one is used to, the type or the cargo signal or the other. Some devices are accepted by certain companies and others are not. So we always try to keep it as more simple as possible. But there is no one sole device for every case. So I think the key is just to adapt and to do like a recipe,
Right.
at the end.
Yeah. Jason and then Tina.
Yeah, I think this idea that what did we gain out of this, or what did we learn and we can adapt, is maybe, I think everybody on this call can probably agree that their company shrunk during COVID. We had to lay people off and furlough people, just like every other institution that we worked with in our industry, right? So you learn to appreciate your staff and what they can do for you. And as we are growing that staff back and trying to figure out where we were just talking about the truckers not being able to be hired because they're not being paid enough or they're overworking too much. It's like, where do you work with your staff that you're not overworking them and that you're appreciating everything they can do? I think it's made us reassess really the value of everybody that's in our team. We thought we already did before, but this is really, like, COVID has really put it to the test. It's been a real come to Jesus moment, I guess, for everybody. I wanted to say one other thing too, and this is just in terms of supply chain. Like, I saw a quote today that can basically be brought down to what is going on with the supply chain. China has basically said they're going to keep zero COVID approach and keep international flights at 2.2% of pre-COVID levels during winter. That's only 2.2% of the flights available. 50% of all air freight that moves is on passenger flights pre-COVID. So if that doesn't tell you why your air freight rates are up or what the availability is on your air freight, that's it right there.
Yeah. Shocking. Tina?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that I think this time has given both, all of us shippers and all of our clients a little time to reflect and catch up. I think we've been on this, for the past 20 some years that I've been at Masterpiece. It's just been a sprint, right? And so it's like we had a little time to sit back and say, well, how can we improve what we're doing? How can we make it make more sense? We've invested in products to help make our clients experience better. We've gone paperless. We had to. We're all working remotely, and our clients are now coming to us and saying they want to look at their carbon footprint, whether they want to pay something or they want to use that data to, maybe improve their practices. I think, all of our accounting, I'm sure, is so much cleaner than it used to be. I mean, I think probably every week prior to COVID, I get this list of things we haven't billed or haven't paid just because there's so much volume, and we now have improved our practices. So our billing is cleaner and everything's getting, out quicker. And, as Jason said, we've all lost staff, and now maybe it's, the build back better. We can all find ways to keep this momentum and keep everything clean and on top of things and continue to find ways to improve. And I think that the last 2 years, I think everybody's found that. I mean, I think it's kind of the best thing that's happened is that we have listened to what clients are saying, and we're finding ways to help serve them.
Yeah. Anna, did you have a point to make? Oh, okay. I wanted to ask George too, because you were in an interesting position where you were growing the Los Angeles Gander and White, and then you were sort of on this upward trajectory, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and you've had your knees clipped. How has it been trying to adapt, and especially with all the supply chain issues, LA being a major port, of course the seaport, but then also the airport. So this is another challenge that you've been faced with.
honestly, to follow what Tina said, I mean, we were, it certainly sharpened my chops, if anything, because I was in a dogfight for survival out here in 2020, and I had to make a lot of adjustments on the fly. And bear in mind, this is back in the beginning of the pandemic. We didn't know what every day would bring, so we had to readjust our focus and our strategy every day. And just it was pretty daunting and certainly very, very trying. But it, like what Tina said, it made us better. It made us sharper. It made us understand that we could survive this. So what we did is, I had to make some difficult decisions as the manager out here. I did have to furlough staff, and I had to bring them back incrementally and slowly according to need, not according to, longevity or length of employment or pay rate or whether I liked them or not. It was basically, I was responding to the immediate needs of the business, right? And we survived. I think our sales were down significantly in 2020. I think that was true of everybody, but we emerged. We survived. We, didn't get crushed. I was able to bring there were a few, layoffs, but I was able to bring everybody else back. And I also, was able to build back better, like Tina said. We remade our office. There were a lot of, because other companies were furloughing talent, there was a lot of Italian talent available for me to rebuild my team. And the business came back, thankfully. And we survived and kept ourselves in a position to capitalize on that. And yeah, it was definitely a learning experience, but it did teach us a lot. You've got to make constant adjustments, and we were able to do it as a group too. Bear in mind, Gannon White is a international group, and some of our branches actually truly benefited from some of the social changes caused by the pandemic, whereby others didn't. But as a group, we definitely worked together and we survived.
I think it's so encouraging to hear that the opportunity to connect with your colleagues, both your employees, your clients, and even just other people in the industry has been really a great moment. I mean, I've felt it here even with ARCS Chat as we've done these chats. I don't want to keep us too much longer, but the last thing I do want to ask is what's the future? Are we looking at more laws, regulations, any sort of permanent change that is resulting from this? What are we to anticipate is coming for the future of the industry and of shipping? We know that air freight's going to go up and down, but what is going to stabilize it besides, of course, the pandemic becoming, say, endemic, but what's the future hold for us? Does anyone want to speculate? Or do I have to call on Ben? Don't make me call on Ben.
If I can add
I was expecting.
Yes, I may say that what Antonio said is really a conclusion. We need to plan very much in advance, not only longer, I mean, with more time in advance, but also the quality of the information we are working with to do the museum's estimates on these projects, to calculate. I mean, we need to improve in that. We need to receive better information. Otherwise, there is no way to arrive to a real estimate and then try to keep these figures in a short or medium term. And this is what our clients need. So, I mean, to insist in the quality of the information, because otherwise it's a mess. It's very, very difficult, even if we are very experienced or we are giving good prices, but margins are no longer existing most of the times. So we need to work very close with the museum in that sense. Time and quality.
If there is something I can add, especially dedicated to the future and the sustainability, I think planning, as we already said, it's very important, and a bit more of flexibility in dates. But this is again something that all the people working to this in this fine art business for an exhibition, they have to understand. Probably, I'm not saying something that maybe some museum will like, but the flexibility on the dates is very important to combine transport. But transport, even to the same exhibition, you don't know how many times we have, for example, flights that arrive from the United States arrive in Italy at 7 o'clock in the morning, others arrive at 11 or 12. And normally, if this shipment is going with a final destination, for example, to Florence, then we have to send one truck for the first flight arriving at 7, another one for arriving at 11, and maybe another one if arriving at 1 p.m. Because if there was a courier that didn't want to wait at the airport, if there is a shipment, they don't want to leave it at the airport. And this is 3 trucks going from Florence to from Milan to Florence, and also on the way back. This is much more important for sustainability more than the couriers themselves, because I mean there is a lot of waste of truck transport, which can be good for us or for the transport agent, but this is not what we want. We want to optimize at the best and help with the budget, but again, I think there should be a bit of a flexibility and understand sometimes while if there is a suggestion, to wait a couple of hours, etc. Still, our fine art trucks still going to the same venue, so it's not really putting together different shipments or different destinations. So it's a fine art shipment, but I think a bit of more understanding of the problems will help all the museums to get better budget and better organize the transport and the shipments. So planning and flexibility, I think, are the 2 words that we need for the future.
Right.
I also think that people have to understand that there are going to be fewer options available down the road for whatever reason. Maybe because there are fewer flights, or maybe because there are fewer drivers. But when you used to have 5, there are only going to be 3. And what Anna said before is, not only do we have to have better information to do the job, but we need better information to do the estimate. If we're getting information that is inaccurate, we can all guess at it a little bit, but it's going to create issues that our estimates are going to be inaccurate, and we're going to be unable to keep them to where we were.
Yeah. Chuck?
Yeah, I was going to say, there are issues that might be minor on like supply chain issues. There might be minor on daily pickups that the clients don't see those cost fluctuations as much as they do on large projects. I mean, the large projects aren't going anywhere. A lot of the funds for those were escrowed before COVID, and they've just been sitting and waiting. So now there's a flow, and and any of those projects are actually, it's a good time to do it. It allows them to bring staff in and to work. But as Bob was saying, flexibility in terms of budget is essential, and contingencies are essential. I've had 2 projects in the middle of it where material prices have more than tripled, quadrupled, and we just can't absorb that. And most of us in our riders state that we don't absorb that. It's based on market, but no one really reads that. And then when you come back with it, there's like a huge surprise. So communication, probably more than flexibility, I found important over the last year. Having that information up front and out there regularly. If I had any of these ongoing projects, I met with the clients weekly to update them on sourcing, material flow, transportation flow, delays, staffing issues. We have constant COVID conferences, and that hasn't changed. We still do that. I meet with all the primary clients once or twice a week And that communication has allowed us to circumvent a number of possible left turns that any of these projects could have taken.
Right. So essentially, everyone needs to manage their expectations and remain flexible for the foreseeable future. All right. Well, this is essentially where we left off at the end of the last discussion in April of 2020, which is we don't know what's happening. We just have to. The big difference, of course, is that we're all working essentially full time again, if we want to be, and so it's a little bit of friction between having to remain flexible, having fewer options. Those options do cost more, and all of us still having to meet our deadlines and make exhibitions happen and make shipping happen. So it's an interesting point that we're at. So any final comments that anyone wants to get in before we close up shop here? Okay, I won't put anyone else on the spot anymore. I just want to thank the panel for joining us, especially, people that are far away. Shige, you're up in the middle of the night to join us. We really appreciate it. Everyone else, thank you so much for coming back and participating. Thanks to everyone who is participating in the chat and joined us today. It's very important to us because obviously we're all in this together. So as usual, we'll turn this into a podcast and release it on this coming Friday after the fact. So if you weren't able to see it live, catch it on your next commute. Thanks. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, and Google Podcasts, the normal spots. Thanks to Robin for all of her technical expertise and Amanda for manning the chat. We'll be back in January with what hopes to be a problematic and otherwise controversial topic. So we'll tell you more about that later. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you